All right, everybody, we're popping, locking, and dropping here. Hello, my name is Paul Esden Jr., a.k.a. Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com, and let's introduce the rest of the room, the rest of my panel. I'm a great point guard here, and look at this talent. I'm only as good as the talent around me. So let's first go off right here to Randy Mueller, former NFL general manager, former executive of the year, bringing us that inside football perspective, and we welcome him here on the show. Randy, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, Paul. Good to have day one in the books and fired up to talk about some of the things we saw.
Yeah, and day two is exciting to me. It's one of my favorite parts of the draft when you get to reset your board. Obviously, that has changed over the years, but I think that's a phenomenal piece as well. And again, let's bring in our final guest of this panel. That's Jonathan Adams live in Las Vegas for the 2022 NFL Draft. Me and Randy didn't get the same invite, John. No offense taken, but we're glad that you're there enjoying things.
There was a save the date that went out, so it should be coming soon. I would just like, you read off Randy's resume. I would just like to add that my Madden 2004, I did a lot of simulations, general manager there, and I thought it was pretty good. So not quite the resume of Randy, but I just want people to realize that I probably peaked Madden 04 is probably my peak in terms of general manager skills. So
it only goes downhill for all of us after that point.
We all eventually get fired
every year. Trust me.
It's a ticking clock.
100%, and that's right. First off, guys, before we dive into day two, where, again, I think we say it every year, how is this level of talent available in day two? And it happens every year with players slipping down the boards for one reason or another. But let's look to the first round. First off, I want a couple of favorites. We'll start off with you, Randy, and jump here first. Was there just a team that you just felt like hit it out of the ballpark, pure home run? You just loved what they did in the first round?
Well, and I'm going to take the low-hanging fruit here, but I think Jacksonville did really good. I thought their defense really improved, not only with the quality of skill sets that they added, but with the kind of people they added. Devin Lloyd from Utah later in the first round, I thought to me was a steal. He was in my top 12 players in the draft. He's a versatile guy that I don't think people realize can rush the passer, can play inside, play outside. And then the fact that they were able to stick to their board and actually draft Travon Walker when all the outside noise had them winning the press conference if they took Aiden, Hutchinson. So I just thought that was a good move by them, both cases. I do know that they kind of moved up to grab Devin Lloyd. Their board was disappearing. So I like the way Trent Baalke handled it. And I know they've taken a beating down there, the way they've acquired players the last couple of years, but I got to give them credit for this. I thought their day yesterday was really good.
There was a great level of aggression there, which I like. Again, when you say a player you like, go get him. Don't be complacent and wait there, which they would have been at 33 in the second round. Let's shift over to you, Jonathan. Was there a team that just stood out to you that really delivered?
It's going to sound like you Venmo me this morning, which might have happened. Who really knows? But I actually love what the Jets did. I'm a big fan of Sauce Gardner. I went to UCF, so I'm used to watching Sauce go the other way with pick sixes and a big physical corner. I know there's some split analysis. I'd be curious to get Randy's thoughts on this between him and Stingley and some of the other corners. We got the Washington corner there. I really like Sauce, though. I like the swagger he plays with. I think it's going to add a little bit of, when you guys had Jamal Adams, I say you guys because I know that you're kind of like right in that front office in many ways. But Jamal Adams had that swagger about him that added that level of defense that kind of, even when the team wasn't necessarily the record-wise wasn't there, he still brought that energy. And I think Sauce is going to do that. You got value with Jermaine Johnson. There's a third player that I'm blanking on that you guys also
Garrett Wilson, number 10.
Yeah. And some might, some are saying he could be the best receiver could come out of this draft. So I just really liked what they did. I thought they got three really, really, really game-changing players in my view. Obviously, we'll see how this pans out. There's questions with Jermaine. That's why he's there. But you didn't pay I got up yesterday reading my coffee, and there were people talking that he could go top 5. So obviously there's something we probably aren't privy to. Randy might be more privy than I am, but obviously there's some things there. But to take a chance on the guy in the late first round, I really liked it. So and then to finish that, I would just say that I really liked what the Giants did. I like Evan Neal a lot. Got to see him at the Alabama Pro Day. I mean, it's super freaky stuff, the way he moves around like a receiver, but he's like jacked like a receiver. But when you see some of those drills and you see the power behind his hands, I just was super impressed with him. So like what they did, they also got another twofer, right? Who did they get?
Kayvon Thibodeau, my boy, the number one player on the board, old Big Blue. Yeah.
Quick story. I know I'm going long here, but we were doing interviews, myself and Austin Boyd. We enter the studio where they're doing the interviews, and all we see is Kayvon Thibodeau, sunglasses, holding 2 chains, running out the building. So another guy with immense swagger. I know there's some people have questions about what he cares about the most, whether it's football. I don't really get into that stuff because I don't have enough background with these guys to tell you that. But I think from a pure talent standpoint, a guy that can get to the pass rusher, I really like him. So I like what both New York, something's cooking up there in New York, and I like what both teams did.
Let me take a couple of handoffs there and throw it over to Randy. Those were good points there that I find very interesting. Let's start off at the top. The Houston Texans, who, again, on the ESPN graphic, draft needs everything, so they could have gone in a number of directions there with the number 3 overall pick. They go Derek Stingley, who, again, the 2019 tape is so elite as a freshman. Some have said they may never see that level of play again from an 18-year-old. Of course, though, we've had the last 2 years of some injuries, but the Texans don't care. They take him 3rd overall. What do you believe, Randy, from your analysis, was the gap between him and Sauce Gardner, who ended up going back-to-back at 3rd and 4th overall, respectively?
Well, I think there's a couple things. The one thing with Stingley is, and you mentioned the flashes that we've seen. Bad news is we just hadn't seen that much the last couple of years. So it's kind of a good news, bad news tale for him. But I do think what they saw in him compared to what some see in Sauce Gardner is the versatility to play all kinds of technique. He can play off, he can play bail, he can play press. Stingley does all of that. And his ball skills are good. They were just inconsistent because there are a lot of times during this void of when he kind of disappeared, he didn't make the plays that he had made prior to. So I think there's a little risk there. I think they think in Houston that they can coach him up a little bit, but I think the versatility of the techniques that he plays allowed them to pick him first. I think the downside with Sauce Gardner is, and I understand the height, it's one, he's broken a mold of a 6'3" corner, which there's not many out there. And that usually comes with a price. If you've seen a ton of these guys like I have over the years, the taller, leaner guys become somewhat stiffer and a little bit hip restricted sometimes, in though they can play press. They can play some man when they play press, but they can't play all those other techniques sometimes like the smaller guys can, like McDuffie from Washington, like Stingley from LSU. They're just a little more versatile. So I think the Jets, with 2 of their picks, to kind of piggyback on what's been said, they did that with Jermaine Johnson as well. He is a scheme-specific player. The reason I think he fell so low is he didn't fit with a lot of schemes. Not many are looking for 250-pound defensive ends. And I know he plays bigger than that, but you got to start with that premise. So he only fits, in my opinion, a 4-man front where he can play outside. And the same with Sauce. I think you see him occasionally play off, but there's a big leap of faith there that the Jets are taking, that he can play these other schemes and these other techniques. So risk reward, they've taken the risk. I think they do have a chance to pay big rewards, but time will tell in these players' development.
No question. And Randy, sometimes you got to risk it to get the biscuit. And that's what the Jets are certainly doing with 3 of those first-round draft choices. That's the first time that's happened for the Jets since the 2000 NFL draft, when they somehow had 4, which is unbelievable. And Jeffrey loved the comments on Facebook. Great job. Shocker was Jermaine Johnson. There was a few shockers in this draft. We'll get into that in just a second. Just a quick follow-up on that, Randy, because, of course, as a resident Jets guy, I have no other choice but to ask the question. But for Jermaine Johnson, is it purely schematic related as to the reason he dropped? Because, of course, some of the other criticisms, he, of course, started his career at that wonderful Georgia. By the way, all those Georgia prospects. Good Lord.
Right? Yeah,
I know. They were going left and right. So he ends up transferring to try to get some more PT. He can't get any playing time over there. I can't blame him when I look at the depth chart. And he ends up going over to Florida State, and his gamble pays off because obviously he has an all-world year, but a huge offseason process. The Senior Bowl helped lift him, in theory, to a top 10 prospect, but ultimately he falls all the way to 26. Is it purely scheme, or do you have any other questions with him?
Well, it's definitely fit. I think with any front 7 player that gets picked, and whether they're defensive linemen, whether they're linebackers, whether this newly created edge position is a factor, it's all about how they fit in a coaching scheme so that they can develop. I think in his case, just say 250 pounds. I don't know that's going to be effective on a 5 technique lining up against 315, 320-pound NFL tackles. So he kind of needs to be out more in space. Some of the things that he did at Florida State will transfer. Other ones are going to be a little harder because the level of competition steps up. So usually when a player drops, in my mind, it's usually about scheme, but it can also be about character and medical. And I'm not questioning that with this kid. We just don't have that information like NFL teams do. They have more medical, they have more character, they have more background information. So that kind of is reflective sometimes when a player who some see higher value drops later in the first round, especially.
And that makes a lot of sense. Again, we're doing a huge NFL draft show here. We're recapping night 1. We're looking ahead to night 2. We've got a wonderful cast of crew and characters here on the show. Randy Mueller, NFL general manager and former executive of the year. We got Jonathan live there in Vegas, who has some level of a Madden 2004 resume he likes to pound his chest about. We're all here with each and every one of you guys. Make sure we're streaming live right now on the Heavy on NFL Twitter page, the Heavy YouTube page. Like the video and subscribe down below for more wonderful and amazing content. But on that very theme, Randy, and we'll also factor you in here, Jonathan, on paper, what the Baltimore Ravens did getting Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum, there's a wow factor there with getting in what is in theory the pick of the litter at both of those positions. However, schematically speaking, Randy, not to get too in the weeds here, the Baltimore fit was weird based on their offensive line schematics. That doesn't seem like a fit with what Tyler Linderbaum did at Iowa, yet they're drafting him. So maybe, again, this is one of those where the talent just supersedes it and they're just going to figure it out. But that one seems strange following the draft.
I think they're banking on intangibles as well. You're talking about a kid that's been coached up really good. He's a very hard worker. He's very competitive. Yeah, maybe he's not as big as some of the guys he's going to block. There's a little size factor there. But I think they're banking on intangibles, football IQ, instincts, that kind of stuff that John Harbaugh, frankly, has made a living with guys like that for years on. So I think that's what they see. And probably some of the same with Kyle Hamilton, the safety. I mean, I don't think they're going out of their way to draft a safety that's a normal intangibles kind of guy. This guy's way up there. His football IQ is high. He played nickel corner at Notre Dame for, in their sub packages. So I think they see versatility there, a little bit of a unicorn in they can play on third downs. He can play all over the field. So I think they've got, again, some parts that can move around with him. I think intangibles, that's always been a big thing. It's football intelligence. It's ability to adjust on the move. Both those two players bring those to the table.
And Jonathan, boy, they went all in on safety. They paid an unbelievable blank check to Marcus Williams, and now they pair him with Kyle Hamilton. Boom, safety just got fixed with a magic wand. Zippity, zappity, boop. That was fantastic. So let me ask you about that pairing there. You get Kyle Hamilton, the first safety off the board. You get Linderbaum. You get the first center off the board. What do you think of that combo there in Baltimore?
I guess I'm still stuck on the fact they traded Marquise Brown, and I don't say that from a talent standpoint, because I think that he's a guy that had elite speed and would flash. He'd have one of those games where he'd have 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then there'd be 3 games where he'd have 1 reception for 13 yards. So, but you got a quarterback there that's up for an extension. Seems not too thrilled with that move.
No.
So I think sometimes you have to look at, there's the scheme part of it, right? But if you have a quarterback that you want there long term and he's not happy with these sort of moves, you can't. I'd be curious to get Randy's thoughts on this, because I know we saw some of this with Seattle, but the unique blend of you go to a quarterback, you ask his opinion, you don't like his opinion, you do something else. In some ways, it can be worse than if you hadn't got the quarterback's opinion to begin with. So what level, if I can ask you, Randy, how is that balance of giving some say to your quarterback, getting him involved in the process, but then you run the risk that if you don't do everything that quarterback said, that they get hurt. We've seen that some with whether it's Aaron Rodgers or other guys. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Randy?
Yeah, I think it's a fine line for sure. I think in this case, Lamar probably might be as upset with Hollywood as he is with the franchise, because that's his boy, right? And he didn't even know it. And we see a half hour later, Hollywood Brown showing up on video at the Cardinals draft party. So this had been in the works, obviously.
I got you.
I thought it was interesting that not only did they make a decision to move on, they were ready to move on, the Ravens were, because they gave up Hollywood Brown and a 3rd round pick to get rid of him. So I kind of took that as whoa, they've had enough of this guy. They're pushing him out the door. So it wasn't like the Cardinals came to them with some great deal that they couldn't say no to. So I think the decision they made was it's time to move on. Maybe the the market for receivers now is reflected in here. Obviously, he's 3 years in now. He had the one good year last year where he had 91 catches, but he had a couple mediocre years before that. I think health is entered in as a factor. He's not a big guy. So my opinion, small guys do get hurt a little bit. Might be a better fit for Cliff Kingsbury and his group out there. So kind of makes sense. But I think there's another shoe that's going to drop with regard to the Ravens offense. I don't know where that is. I don't know how they do it. But I figure if they've gotten rid of him, there's some other plan in the mix to add a playmaker at some point to give Lamar, some of the weapons that we all think he's been missing for him the last couple of years. So I'm anxious to see if we're going to see some movement out of them today or tomorrow, or something that some other foot drops for the Ravens.
And before we get to this question, just so everyone knows, Marquise Brown has another 2 years left in his contract, so it's inevitable that the new team, Arizona, who again reunites him with Kyler Murray, his former college teammate, that contract is going to be coming. Let's go to the social media world here on Facebook. Jerry Benson chiming in. Did any of you think the Lions were trading up to select Kyle Hamilton like I did? I'm going to be honest. When you make that kind of leap, they went from 32 to 12. First off, the trade up that large is unique. Secondly, when it's a division rival, remember, they traded with the Minnesota Vikings. That one also raised an eyebrow for me. But normally when you make that kind of quantum leap, to me, it screamed quarterback because they have Jared Goff there, of course. You normally don't make that for Kyle Hamilton. So I did not anticipate Kyle Hamilton. Safety is, of course, a need there for the Lions. But the wide receiver, again, that was kind of a stunner. The fact that you're going all in for the Lions, and I love that. We just talked about it earlier with Jacksonville jumping back in to go get their guy in Devin Lloyd. Moving up, obviously, you feel pretty good about Jamison Williams, who, again, depending on who you ask, is expected to miss somewhere around half of the season. That's a bit of a Debbie Downer. His camp says he'll be ready by camp. Others, I've heard from the Jets side of things, because they were looking in on him, said he won't be ready till November, December. So I don't know. It's all over the place, but I did not expect it to be Kyle Hamilton despite the need. Let's go around the room real quick, around the horn. Randy, who did you think they were trading up for?
Well, I didn't know who they're trading up for, but the fact that they did trade up kind of surprised me. I don't think they are one player away. In fact, I don't even think they're close to being one player away. So giving up any assets in the future to get one guy who is hurt, and I see no way he's going to be ready for camp. I mean, that would be modern medicine, and I'm no
right.
doctor guru. I've stayed at a few Holiday Inns, but that doesn't make me an expert in the medical field. But that would be unprecedented for him to be ready for camp. So I think some of that was agent talk and selling. But I thought it was a little bit of a reaction to the momentum and emotion of their first pick. I think they were celebrating getting Aiden Hutchinson. Did it surprise you guys that the Lions ran the card up there as fast as they could after Javon Walker got picked? That's Dan Campbell, right? That's him. If there was ever a perfect match, it was that. They're going to bite each other's kneecaps and do all the things that come with it. But as soon as that happened, I felt like then the Lions front office was feeling it. They go make a trade up for something. And I guess maybe it stems for me from the standpoint of I wasn't quite as high on the player, Jamison. I think there's some rawness there. There's a guy that didn't play at Ohio State because guess what? He was the backup to Wilson and Olave. So I think there's still some development there. I don't doubt his speed. I know he can run fast and all that, but there's some development there. And so I was not enamored with him as a player, much less one that you would trade up to grab. Being that he's raw and must develop and that he's injured. So I was a little lukewarm on that move totally.
And by the way, unique fun fact there that those three Ohio State former teammates went bang, bang, bang. 10 Garrett Wilson, 11 Chris Olave, 12 Jamison Williams. Wow. First world problem there, apparently in OSU. All right, let's jump over to you, Jonathan. You were there, live on the scene. And again, the trades can make things crazy. When you see that flash across the screen there, the fans start giving their reactions to it. Did you have an immediate thought of who they were trading up for? Were you with Jerry here, going with Kyle Hamilton? Did you think maybe quarterback Malik Willis slipped? Of course, he's still available here in day 2. More on that later. What were your thoughts?
Well, I was just surprised. I think I was in the Sauce Gardner press conference. I come back. I think the trade already happened and the pick had already happened. So I guess I could say I was surprised, but not in the same way that you. Well, I was. The buzz in the media room was the compensation that it was the Vikings, correct? That they had.
Correct. Yeah.
It didn't seem like the Lions gave up as much as I would have expected them for that.
Exactly.
They're looking up more, 20 plus spots, right?
Yeah, and in the second round too, right? Wasn't there some moving in the second round as well?
Like a swap, I think.
Yes, they had to give up more, so they had to move up. What was that, 32 and 34, which is the second pick of the second round as part of that combination. And also, as I mentioned at the top, we're talking about this on my radio show this morning. When you trade up that high, you pay a tax. And when you trade with a division rival, you pay an extra tax. That's what history says. If you want to trade up, and I'm going to be facing, in this case, Jamison Williams twice a year as the Vikings, you make them hurt to make that trade up. So, yes, I'm not surprised, Jonathan, that you guys had that same buzz in the media room. It seemed like when you make that, you're giving up a future first. You're giving up something wild. And it seemed like they kind of avoided the pain of that deal.
Yeah, so I like the move for it. It's just, I guess it's the question, like Randy said, is that the player? When I like some of these receivers today, they're going to go off the board. That maybe they could have gotten the second round, or if you're going to move up, maybe get a guy that's completely healthy that either, so I don't know. I don't fault the move. It just was maybe as Randy pointed out, I'm not sure if that's the guy that you move up, with coming off of an ACL injury like he is. So.
That's true. And said, we just brought up that you were on the scene there. How were the boos for Roger Goodell? We always anticipate the boo town coming. So how was that live there in Vegas?
It's fun because Roger's always strategic about this. He kind of rolled deep yesterday. He had, if you saw behind him, it was, I think Marcus Allen was there. I think, Derek Carr was there with some sort of weird haircut situation. Somehow Southern accent that I'm still trying to figure out. And there was one other guy, Darren Waller, I think. So
yes, that's right.
They were loud, and then once Derek Carr welcomed apparently everyone to the South, massive cheers. It's very this city seems to have really for so long didn't have a pro sports team, and now they have NHL here. They have got NFL. I'm in my hotel. There's grown men doing Raiders chants at like 10 in the morning. So they are fired up for this team. If this team can become a contender eventually, obviously has great success this year. So definitely it's turned into a Raiders city, even though they've only been here, for just a few years.
That may be one of the wildest divisions I've ever heard of. You have Patrick Mahomes, you have Derek Carr, you have Russell Wilson and Justin Herbert. Woof. I mean, someone's got to finish last. Someone's got to finish first. Again, I'm glad they're all in the same division, so I guess they'll all beat each other up. But, man, that's got to be one of the best divisions in football, which obviously got a little bit better. The Chiefs had a couple of extra first-round picks. The Raiders just probably watched Devontae Adams highlights in their hotel room, which I'm sure they feel great about. So, again, a lot of wildness happening here. Let's go to this. We brought it up earlier, the stunning pick. There was a few that I think had a lot of people going, wow, their jaws dropped somewhere on the floor with some of these selections that happened in a variety of places. So I won't infect your brains with a couple of picks. I was going to say, I'll let you guys just, unfiltered, give me what you think. Let's go to our resident NFL insider, Randy Mueller, from a front office perspective. What was the one that made you raise an eyebrow?
Well, the one that hit me first and foremost was the Falcons at 8. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
Out of these receivers that we've been talking about for 2 months now, they picked the slowest of the group and the one that's coming off of a fractured ankle. And now they've picked twice in the top 10, and they still haven't addressed tackle. They haven't got a quarterback, and they really don't have a fast perimeter player out of their 2 trips to the top 10. That, from a team builder standpoint, kind of shocked me. That set me back. So I don't know how they overcome that. Maybe they think they're going to be picking up there often. If they do, it's probably going to be somebody else making the picks. But I just thought that was a buzzkill for me. And maybe the USC kid, maybe he comes around as a good player. But again, he's not fast. He's going to always be in crowds. Yeah, he makes contested catches, but guess what? He's going to be covered in the NFL too. So that pick to me just was a little eyebrow raising. As much as the team build that's going on there, I didn't really understand it, and not that means anything. That's just the way I took it. I didn't like it.
Yeah, I assumed Garrett Wilson there all day, every day. So when he wasn't, for the Jets, I was like, wow, I never thought Garrett Wilson would have been available to make it here, which is interesting. Right. Let's swing over to you, Jonathan. There was a lot of wild ones in this draft where teams just said, hey, we're making our pick. We're making our guy. So what do you think? And I see Mitch in here. Make no mistake, Garrett Wilson is the beast. You're damn right he is, Mitch. Welcome to the squad, old Garrett Wilson. But what about you, Jonathan? What pick made you just go, wow?
I think there was a few different storylines. Obviously, the Patriots going to Chattanooga. It's a little bit of a
brutal.
I'm a big fan of Chattanooga. Go to Chattanooga
Strange.
often. One of my favorite cities, close to Atlanta, close drive, nice food, nice people. I can't say I'm locked into Chattanooga football. The basketball team have a good run this year, so I'm not going to say that I know a ton about this prospect, but to take him in the first round, I think it definitely obviously shocked the Rams a little bit.
Yeah, did you see that response? That was great.
Yeah,
that was great.
Very often.
And this morning, someone on NFL Network was saying that response because they actually really liked the player, they thought he could be there for them. But even if they really liked the player, that shows you kind of where they had him, graded, right? So if someone's wrong here, maybe Bill Belichick will get the last laugh. I thought Dallas with Jermaine Johnson on the board. I thought that with what happened with Randy Gregory, that could have been a guy that they looked at, but they had been kind of telegraphing. Dallas is one of the teams that you'll kind of get a feel for who they're going. Not
they just can't not say it. They can't.
They will tell you the position that they're really targeting. And so it wasn't a surprise that they went offensive line, but I know a lot of people are questioning that pick. And then obviously with the Packers not going with the receiver again, it seems like we should expect this by now. They're kind of making it MO, but I see this some with the Seahawks where sometimes it feels like they get a little bit stubborn with with their situation. They rarely taken a quarterback high. They often take offensive linemen that have been converted basketball players. They have this sort of like mold of guys that they really like. And sometimes I wonder if there's a little bit of stubbornness that happens with the Packers. They kind of are committed to not for rarely taking receivers high. And at some point, there's good value here. So maybe after, that's the thing about these picks, we're kind of being critiquing, but at the end of today, we could have a totally different perspective once you see the full body of work. So I'm hesitant to just crush them over because I think there's a lot of guys that are pretty solid here on the board, but those were a few that came to mind that were surprising.
Another thing that was surprising, Jerry Jones showing their draft board to the crowd. You see this? This is where we had them. And then Steven's like, Jerry, can you put that down, please? The cameras, I'm like, what the hell? So Jerry's had a week, man.
I wonder if Jerry Jones has a few Johnny Walker Blacks in at that point the night. But, I wasn't there, so I can't say for sure. But that would be about a little bit of a
that must have been it.
For old Jerry.
I want to follow up on the strange thing with you, Randy, and we talked about this on my radio show this morning. So okay, New England takes Cole Strange, a prospect most of us thought was a third or fourth rounder, and then while most teams would get roasted for that, the common phrase I got from people when I started going, let me text some people to see if there's something I don't know, they went, well, it's the New England Patriots. Of course they'll figure it out, and so they get the benefit of the doubt. Randy, as a front office guy, do they deserve to get just? Of course, they'll figure it out, and they shouldn't get roasted as they should be. As some of these other teams, that if they would have made that pick, they'd been roasted over the flames. But because they're the New England Patriots, it's okay.
Well, I think they've earned a license over the years to screw things up and have it swept under the rug. There's no doubt. Even us as insiders at other teams, I mean, Tom Brady gave them a license to screw things up for 20 years. So they can cover up a lot of warts, right? A lot of mistakes. The other thing is you have Bill Belichick in charge, and he's the guy that picks the players, and therefore the players he picks get 4 and 5 swings at the plate before we deem them to not be good. So I can promise you this kid's going to get a look, and no matter how it goes this year or next year, he's going to be there for time to come. And I just think you're right. They do get a pass. You don't think the Jets would have been hammered for picking this guy late?
Oh, my God. Can you imagine the front and back pages? Oh, my.
So I think there's something to that. I think you got to consider the source, and most people just out of respect say, oh, that's the Patriots. They're smarter than everybody else.
Yeah, and that's normally the take. I'll throw a couple other ones that just kind of made a few people kind of go interesting. Jahan Dotson going 16th overall to the Washington Commanders after a trade back scenario where the Saints moved up. He was interesting. He was kind of a borderline end of round one guy that could potentially go. But of course, we have to bring this up. Randy, history was made last night. Count them, one quarterback went in the first round. That was Kenny Pickett, of course, from Pittsburgh to Pittsburgh, there with the Steelers, which obviously, by the way, was a nice touchy-feely moment. He's crying, the family's around him. That was really cool. But, man, I know that we talked about this quarterback class not being good, but it seems like regardless of how good or bad a quarterback class is, every year they go. Why didn't they this time around?
Well, I think that was my takeaway from the first round, is that you can't create prospects. As much as those in the media, people that are evaluating outside buildings try to do, they try to create prospects, and you just can't do that. NFL teams won't they're not going to buy that. So I think that was the big thing for me. And I know Malik Willis had all of this attention leading up to this. I got news for you. He may not be the next quarterback picked either. There's some other guys in the same mix that, these 6 foot tall guys aren't for everybody. So start with that premise. And so, yeah, it was different. Obviously the Kenny Pickett thing I thought was the good feel of the first round. And you guys may know this, but if you don't, I'll just say this, the University of Pittsburgh football shares a building with the Steelers. You actually walk in the University of Pittsburgh football office door, 20 feet to the left is the Steelers door. So the only thing that changes in this kid's life is he has to go left instead of right in the parking lot. That's it. And so his life is unbelievably, unaltered by this event. Now, the quality of the roommates in the left door are a little higher. Right. But it's just crazy that this guy's nothing changes in his life. Just one door, 20 feet to the left is all that changes.
Wow, not too shabby. Jonathan, let's swing it over to you. Does this create a quarterback buzz in round 2, or should we just listen to the voices of round 1 saying, no, man, quarterbacks are going to go when they're going to go? Again, we can't just make up something that isn't here. Do you anticipate a big quarterback buzz here of teams either trading up? You mentioned Seattle. That team has got back-to-back picks here in the second round. They could look to move up, or simply will quarterbacks just kind of fall the same way Kenny Pickett did?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a run here. I'm curious to see who the Seahawks have been linked to about 5 different quarterbacks in this range. I just read an article today with McShay and Dane Brugler from The Athletic, both projecting that Willis drops to 40 to the Seahawks. I would like to see that from the standpoint of covering the team, because I think it would add a lot of buzz, and I think Willis is a dynamic personality. Seeing him at the Senior Bowl, he kind of lit up the whole thing. But then you go back, like Randy's saying, you watch the game against Ole Miss and some of those games where he struggled a little bit, and there's this thing that happens at the Senior Bowl where you get to know the prospect, super, energetic and the whole thing, and it kind of can change the narrative a bit. But I'm wondering if the Seahawks really liked Willis. It feels like to me they would have, traded back up with those 2 picks at their disposal. It seems like they would have moved back into the first round to get their guy. And so I'm kind of wondering if it maybe is Ritter or Corral. I'd be curious to get your guys' thoughts on who they might go. But I definitely think the Seahawks are going to take a guy. But I wonder, maybe they even wait to the 3rd round and see if Sam Howell or someone like that falls. Like, it doesn't seem like they're locked in on the same guys that maybe we are as media members. But there's other teams there. I'm looking because I was looking at, who picks before the Seahawks, and you got, there's some buzz that Tennessee could have looked at their, late first round. I know it seems like they're kind of once again committed to Kirk Cousins in Minnesota, but that's a team that, we've got Atlanta, in that mix. So there's teams there that I think we're going to see a run, but it's going to be Schefter reported that the Bucs aren't planning on trading that pick. I don't know if that's leveraged by the Bucs trying to get more out of people.
Right.
But I expect to see someone trading up to get quarterback. Like Randy said, is it Willis? Is it Ritter? Is it Corral? I don't know. But I definitely think we're going to see a run here.
The dynamics of this pick might be interesting to some in that in NFL draft rooms, the high picks in the second round get a lot of run. They get a lot of attention. And we would sit around after day 1 contemplating, can we get up there in the top of the second round? Because here's why. There's going to be somebody on many of these boards who's still in the top 15 in the first round just staring at these teams. So that's why these picks are valuable at the top of the second round. And you always see maneuvering, people trying to get that pick that's 33, 34, because every year it happens. Somebody in that top 15 is still there. And whether you stack them right or not, you've got to go with your process, and the integrity of your board says we're getting another first round pick here. So if we can just move up 6 or 8 spots, we've secured a first round pick that nobody else saw coming. So the wheels are in motion around the league and in these draft rooms, and there's a lot of talk. People would be surprised about these first 10 picks in the second round. I've been more nervous sitting there at 8 or 9 in the second round than I've been at 15 in the first round, just because the value of the players that you're going to get are really high, and they've been stacked somewhere totally different than where you'll get them in the second round.
Randy, we make a lot of hubbub here in the media about 5th-year option and how important that is in the latest CBA, and why we were kind of surprised more teams didn't trade back into the first round for like a quarterback, let's just say. Again, we make a lot of noise about that in the media. Is that really the same in the NFL front office, that people in NFL value the fifth-year option with quarterbacks specifically, but just in general, as much as we say they do in the media?
I don't think so. I think the overlying principle is I'm going to get the best player. Yeah. And I'm not going to let the contract length determine which guy I pick or which position I happen to choose. I do think it's factored in. We talk about it. So we don't just totally disregard it, but that's the case at any position. Hey, would we rather have this guy on a 5-year deal? Let's take him at the bottom of the first round if that's the case. And people that don't know should know that first-year guys or first-round picks get 5 years. It's less in the second round. So you have your rights can be tied to a player longer if you pick him in the first round. So it gets a little run, but I still think the quality of the player and the value where he is on your board wins out at the end of most of these discussions.
All right, let's head into day 2. Randy, you said that there sometimes could be that player that surprisingly is there that shouldn't be, that is like, for instance, a top 15 player on your board. And the one example I'll bring up is New York Jets general manager Joe Douglas yesterday. They asked him, hey, is there one of those kind of players on the board? And he just got a big grin across his face and went, oh, yeah. Absolutely. And it just sounds like, again, I think a commenter on Twitter is the one who said it. It's like the cat staring at the canary in the cage. So he must have someone on his mind, and I'm sure a lot of these teams do. Who do you, Randy, have your eye on here in the second round that is just kind of unbelievable value and someone's going to get a heck of a steal?
Well, I don't know about the specific player, Paul, but the fact that there are some of these teams that have 2 selections, they're the ones you got to watch. Because a team like Seattle sitting there at 40 and 41 or whatever they are, I could surely see them moving up to the top of that round if they can and getting the valued pick that it depends how high up on your first round the remaining card is per se. And if it is at a position of need for you, that's when you would pay a premium to go up to the top of the second round. So I think those teams, who else is in there? Did the Jets have
Bears? The Bears have 39 and 48. Yeah. That's another double dipper I see. Seattle, as we just kind of mentioned, are back-to-back there as well. They could make a lot of sense in the second round. So we got a couple teams.
Yeah, I think you're probably done with receivers for people moving up for receivers, but I still see offensive linemen always being an issue. You may get a tackle that is kind of on a fringe, second round kind of guy, and you've got to move up to get him. Again, the premium positions still are tackle, our quarterback, and our fast guys. And usually that comes at receiver or corner. That's still the premium that people will go up to get. The other positions, not so much. So that part of the dynamic hasn't changed.
And what about you, Jonathan? Is there a prospect you like? And I'm going to feed one into the question because I love Nakobe Dean out of Georgia. He could be he could have been, you could make an argument, he was one of the best players on that Georgia defense, and yet he is somehow still available. So he's certainly one that stands out to me. But what about you, Jonathan? Is there one that you're licking your chops about?
Yeah, it's the same thing. Nakobe Dean, I'm almost surprised that he didn't go late, yesterday. He was a guy that there's so many Georgia players, just like you said, there's just like, let's just, when in doubt, let's just grab someone from this Georgia team. Like Kirby Smart's done an amazing job of recruiting and kind of becoming, Alabama to the to the east there. So one thing I'm curious about is what happens with these quarterbacks, because I look at a team. I know we keep talking about this, but the fans love to talk about the quarterbacks, so I'm going to keep going here. You look at a team like the Seahawks. They obviously said, you know what, at 9, we don't think these quarterbacks are worthy of that number 9 pick. John Schneider yesterday said that, the pressure that comes with that, he just had really concerns that what that does to a guy. Frank, a lot of people agree with me.
He's just laying it on thick. I love that, Frank.
I want to know what you guys think about this, because let's say the Seahawks at 9, they wanted to obviously go out with Cross, right? But maybe they expected Willis and Pickett to go in that 20 and 25 range, and then they kind of been talking themselves into Ritter, to Corral, to these other quarterbacks. But now you're looking at your board, and the guy that you kind of maybe eliminated in your mind that you didn't think was a possibility, and you kind of went down the road in the path of Corral or Ritter or Howe or whoever you like there. Now the conversation seems like it, to Randy's point, would shift a little bit in that room, because you're looking at a player that you maybe weren't considering as much. I don't know. Maybe this is just outside. This is Madden 04 talking. So maybe Randy can tell me if I'm off base here, but I'm curious if that shifts when you, especially at the quarterback position, when a guy drops like we're seeing with Willis, or maybe he didn't drop. Maybe it's like the media projecting a guy based on, some pro day highlights and shorts and a weird spin move and, his personality. So I don't know. I'm just curious about that aspect for sure.
Yeah, I don't think we have any way of knowing. That's the thing. And
Right.
I put myself in the draft room, and I wasn't a big Willis fan, so there's a good chance that whatever team I was running, he probably wouldn't have been in the first round. And we don't know that about other teams. I think it depends on where they're board and how it's being shuffled after 32 picks have come off it now. That's the whole thing to me. And you're right. You may consider some different thoughts if somebody is really high on your board that you thought would be gone. I just don't think one of these quarterbacks would be that, but it could be that it's at another position as well. I just think either you like these guys or not. They're on your board based on where you value them. That part doesn't change. So it's not like you're moving these cards all around. You've judged them, you've put them on your board, and now you react to it for sure. But I don't think you're going to change the way you feel about a quarterback or any position really, just based on the fact that he's there.
All right, let's go to this question here. I find it interesting, and this is from 88 Stephen Wendell. Was there a better pick at 20? Maybe. But the Steelers better now than they were 24 hours ago? Absolutely, yes. Pickett made sense. I want to bring this up because here's my thought. They signed Mitchell Trubisky in the offseason, and again, in the NFL, free agency is before the draft, so obviously that's important. But to me, Kenny Pickett seems like a high-floor player, but the ceiling is questionable. And if that's the case, isn't that just Mitchell Trubisky? Like, if you wanted to get something different, maybe Malik Willis is that guy who has traits, and he has to develop, and he has to wait at least a year on the bench, and you would have had that with Mitch Trubisky. Like, there's a reality in my mind that Kenny Pickett goes to camp and loses the battle to Mitch Trubisky, which then to me is kind of strange. Let's do a quick roundabout around the room. What do you guys make of Pickett to the Steelers? We'll start off with you, Randy.
I would make the argument that I don't want Pickett to win the job, and I'm glad we have Trubisky. So that's a one-year Band-Aid so that Pickett can transfer all of his knowledge and skills to the other side of the building. That's just going to take some time. There will be a learning curve, slight. I think less of a learning curve for Pickett than any of these other guys we've talked about. So I don't think it's a negative. I think you can take a position of weakness and make it a strength. I like the fact that they have Trubisky. I think, and this is just my opinion, Paul, I think Pickett's ceiling is a little higher than where I've seen Trubisky go to this point. Now, a new system, a new scheme might take Trubisky up a little bit in regard to his ceiling, but he hasn't proved he can do it on a day-to-day basis either. So I think Pickett has been asked to make more of the throws, has a bigger body of work when this competition starts, even than Trubisky for sure had coming out, maybe even has now. I think the Steelers determined when they signed Trubisky that they were willing to put most of that blame on Matt Nagy and the Bears' chaos and not on Trubisky. So I think they see some upside there as well.
That's a good point by Randy. Again, the transition for Kenny Pickett shouldn't be hard. I mean, he doesn't even have to move, for Pete's sake. I mean, it should be pretty easy. He should have plenty of time to focus on the playbook. But what about you, Jonathan? What do you make of Kenny Pickett to Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I have questions about the fact that so many fumbles. That worries me a little bit. Not so much about like everyone brings up the hand size. Well, like to me, it's not really about the hand size as much as the fumbles. Like if you have small hands and you don't fumble, or if you have big hands and you fumble, that's a big thing. That's a big concern to me. So I don't know. I will just say that I witnessed a Mitchell Trubisky Steelers jersey. Like one of the first jerseys I saw at the draft was that. I was not expecting that to happen, but it's out there in the wild. So there are some Steelers fans with a lot of confidence in that move.
Apparently.
It might have to be crossing out and try to scribble in Kenny Pickett's name, but maybe in a year, like to Randy's point, if he, is able to win the job or they sit Pickett for a year. So I have some questions there. I think that I would have preferred to just take a gamble on a quarterback later on in the draft. You're going to go that route with maybe a quarterback with a little bit more upside, in my opinion. Now, Kenny Pickett could go out and, there's a lot of talk. People don't remember, Josh Allen and Justin Herbert. There were a lot of questions about them, obviously higher in the draft picks, but went out and proved people wrong. So these quarterbacks can do that. I'm just, we're just going on the facts that we know here. From the limited information that we know. And I just have some questions there. I probably would have gone a little bit a different route and waited later in the draft and taken one of these guys today that I actually like a little bit better.
And again,
I was just going to say that may answer another question for us too. Maybe they didn't like any of those other guys.
Correct. Yeah.
Very much
potential guys. So it was a one-man show, one ball league for them. And that's why they picked him. I mean, some of this we don't know. It's all conjecture.
100%. And again, some people have red flags about the ceiling. Some people have red flags about his small hands. I have red flags about that fake slide. I mean, what is the defense supposed to do? I mean, the officials,
in the character now, is that a character assessment?
That's 100% a character assessment. He would have been off my board completely. As soon as he fake slides, the defender kind of lightens up, hit him, and then he runs to the house, and then he's like, I'd be looking at the ref like, what the hell? What gives, man? So, again, huge red flag. Off the board. Remove. Grab that sticker, nameplate, and throw it in the Garbaggio. Okay, guys, let's do some final thoughts here. Go around the room as we wrap up. This was a lot of fun. Again, Randy Mueller, NFL general manager, and Madden general manager, Jonathan Adams here as well. We got a full room. And so let's get some final thoughts here. Again, as we look into day 2, first off, we'll start off with you this time, Jonathan. What are you most excited about as we head into day 2 of the draft, which, of course, starts at 7 o'clock with both the second and third rounds, respectively?
Well, I have an angel and a devil on my shoulder, and the angel's probably Randy warning me about Malik Willis and why I shouldn't be interested in him. But yes, when I go downstairs in Vegas, there's poker tables all over, and people are pushing their chips in. There's the devil on my shoulder saying, if I'm the Seahawks, if I'm a team like the Titans, if I'm one of these teams, maybe Vegas, despite all the stuff on film that I have questions about, despite all the things, when I meet him in person, when I see that person, when I think of a franchise quarterback, what he would potentially be, there's a part of me that's like a little bit, the devil might just be pushing the chips in a little bit. So I want to see where he goes. I obviously want to see where Jacoby Dean goes. Also, just notice you have the Jets new era hat that the prospects are wearing. So shout out to you. Got that fresh off the
fresh shirt. I got all the gear, baby. You got to be equipped. It's got
the Jets pajamas underneath. We can't see right now, but no. So I think it's going to be a fun day. Overall, I am curious to see. I know we keep talking quarterbacks, but this is a quarterback-driven league, and I think there's a lot of good skill position players as well.
Sure.
Watson's still on the board from North Dakota State, and so there's a few players. A lot of people like Sky Moore.
Yes.
A lot of guys. I'm looking at this best available list earlier this morning, and these are guys you thought were going to go yesterday. So, but again, I'm looking for that team that's going to push their poker chips in the middle for Malik Willis.
I like it.
Despite all of the concerns that maybe they can make it work. We'll see.
Okay. And for you, Randy, what are you excited about for day 2?
Well, I think for me, it's a little bit different in that, we had no running backs picked. We had no tight ends picked. And that may not be a surprise, but I'm anxious to see what team selects which one of these. In their mind, they're getting the best running back in this group. They're getting the best tight end in this group. So maybe not a need for a team specifically, but the value is there. I think a couple running backs, I had given a couple running backs first round grades later on. I understand why they didn't get picked. I'm not sure I would have picked them, but those would be guys I would consider higher in the second round. So kind of anxious to see who will be the top running back picked and who will be the top tight end picked.
I love that. Those are my favorites, the pick of the litter picks, because, again, you will get compared. If you're, let's just say, the Jets, you take Breece Hall for a random example. Every other team after you will compare that you had your choice of any of the running backs. So they become superstars and your guys are bust. You're a loser. So it's just the nature of the beast, I guess, in this world. Randy, Jonathan, thank you guys so much for joining us here on this live stream. A lot of fun recapping night 1, talking about and previewing day number 2. Guys, enjoy the draft. Randy, enjoy it on the couch. Jonathan, rein it in there, pal, over there in Vegas. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, I suppose. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Peace out.